Zionist devil, get out, not my words. But Labour's Tan Desi was hounded whilst canvassing outside, of all places, a mosque in Slough. So let's remind ourselves what that word actually means, right? What that word Zionist means. This is simply someone who thinks that Jews deserve their own home, right? But threats and intimidation against MPs are only going to get worse, mark my words. Have a look at this.
Leave, man. This is a place of worship. We don't need devils like you here. Move. Move from here. Get out. Get out. Move. Get out. You're not welcome. You're not welcome here. Zionist devil. Zionist devil.
And then there's Naz Shah MP, not exactly a go-to gal for Zionism, right? But she's been called a dirty, dirty Zionist and paid for by Friends of Israel this week. That's the twisted state of anti-Semitism on our streets.
Go on, I'll follow you around. It's not the area for you.
Well, that's interesting.
Not the area for you, love. You need to get out of here. No, mate, no. I'm going to speak for everyone around there. I'm going to follow you around. You dirty, dirty, dirty.
I mean, listen, I'm not their biggest fans, right? I'm not going to vote for them myself. But, you know, we're facing a real problem here. Religious sectarianism is crawling into British politics, and this election is its ugly debut. I think it's high time that politicians are honest with the public. Multiculturalism is failing, and we're seeing it after iPhone video after iPhone video. Time to call it out for what it is. Right, Benjamin, I mean, you must be upset to see this happening to Labour Party politicians.
Well, to anybody, yeah. I mean, I have to say, Naz Shah, who you just showed there, has been through this many times before. So she previously was up against George Galloway for that constituency, who is the pinnacle of abuse on these issues. But also, before her time in politics, she was put into a forced marriage and forcefully sent to Pakistan. And her mother famously killed her father because the family was a victim of horrific abuse. So, you know, she, in the videos, you see her sort of laughing at this guy because she's been through a lot worse than some idiot hounding her when she's door knocking. Of course, then everyone online says, are you laughing at the people of Gaza, which is, you know, such an ugly way to interpret it. I don't know if it's religious sectarianism, though, because many of the people, I mean, not the Sikh man first, but Naz Shah, for example, is a Muslim. So it's not really a religious issue, but it's that they've taken what I would consider a slightly extreme view on the issue of Gaza. But I think we have a problem.
Well, it's religious in the sense of they're using Zionist as being interchangeable for Jew, essentially, right? They're calling out Jews and people associated with them, are they not?
I mean, they probably are, but those people were, I mean, many of them are Muslims that were involved, so I don't think, you know, obviously it wasn't anti-Semitic when it was aimed at Muslim women. But I think we have a problem with the way we think it's appropriate to speak to politicians. So tonight, Rosie Duffield, the Kent Labour candidate, she said that she won't do any hustings in the constituency because she fears abuse. And I think you're seeing lots of these examples, and there needs to be a reckoning that a democracy does not mean you can shout at people who put themselves forward for public office.
But do you not think that you have stoked up that sentiment? Because actually, Rosie Duffield, were she to appear on this show and speak about her views around sex and gender, you'd be telling her she's a bigot.
Yeah, and that's my right, because that's a democratic act.
Well, you just said we need to speak nicer to politicians.
Because that's quite different to shouting at someone in the street or at hustings. And she'd be entitled to say the same back if she might think it. But that's quite different to people that don't seem to know where the line is, who shout and abuse politicians.
You know the hypocrisy of all of this, particularly from the Labour group, and we've seen a lot of them online over the last few weeks. When Nigel Farage was hit with that milkshake and then consequentially with the coffee cup and the rock, whatever it was, he was laughed at by the left, but the likes of Owen Jones calling it art. They are encouraging this behaviour. So they're stoking the flames, inflammatory flames, that this is acceptable. It's acceptable to hound politicians at their home or on the street. It's acceptable to throw things at politicians you don't like. This is demeaning to our democracy. It's taking the whole level of debate to a whole substandard level.
I assume in that case you condemn people like Tommy Robinson and the incidents that have happened, which you constantly celebrate online.
What do you think I celebrated online?
Utter thuggery.
No, I've never celebrated that online. What are you talking about?
Like in November of last year, when there's all sorts of scenes, and you constantly defend those people.
No, I don't.
Those people do much
politicians.
I think you need to be more specific, because I've never condemned anyone who's...
patriots.
Well, some of those people were just out celebrating St George's Day. Not all of them were violent.
Can't you? Those two things can
Alex
be true at the
sees
same
both
time.
and likes it, I think.
No, absolutely not.
Tommy
I mean, look,
Robinson's
I think
not here to
it's
defend himself, right?
Thank
So
God.
he would argue that actually in November, what MPs did he harass and hound?
No, I'm saying
calling
him
them
as a-
dirty Zionists.
They are political figures who inflame tensions, who constantly get into violence when they have their so-called gatherings.
Well, they had a
This
they had a
behaviour is
gathering.
diabolical.
Early
And
July,
I'm
they
sorry,
had a
but there are
gathering
so
on
many
the
people
streets.
like Alex on the right who excuse that behaviour
No.
and then complain.
They
Can I-
had a
look,
gathering-
hang on, let
they had
me
a
just
mass
defend myself,
gathering
'cause,
in July,
but-
they had a mass gathering in July, and there was no outbreak of violence.
There was no outbreak of violence at all. And I think, look, to sit there and say that I defend people that are violent is completely a massive mischaracterisation of my politics. So I really take issue with that, Benjamin. And lastly, what I will say is this, is that there's plenty of people in this country who are fed up with two-tier policing, fed up with the failed multicultural state that we're trying to force onto people, that want to go out and protest, and there's always going to be people who are violent. Yes, and we should call those people out, and I always will.
Just before you comment, I just want to show this picture of Ahmed Yaqub, who is standing in Birmingham Ladywood, and the MP, which Benjamin Butterworth is going to remind me of, is called, she's in the Shadow
Phillips.
Cabinet.
Is it
No,
Jess Phillips?
no. Shadow Cabinet. It'll come to me.
Mahmood?
Yes, that's it. Well done, Albie. And this man is standing against her, Ahmed Yaqub, and he did stand for West Midlands Mayor. And on his leaflet, of course, and advertisements, it said, "Lend Gaza your vote." And I just wonder, Albie, if you think this is a sure sign of that, what I call religious sectarianism entering British politics.
Why is it religious sectarianism? Because the guy is a Muslim and is pro-Gaza.
Well,
that's religious sectarianism.
And they're calling people dirty Zionists on the
Right,
streets.
but that wasn't the same person. You are kind of conflating lots of different issues in order to kind of come up with this straw man of religious sectarianism.
Okay, when people
have asked me this question about whether or not people being political about their opinions on Israel and Gaza is religious sectarianism, you only seem to call it religious sectarianism when it's the Muslim side organising and doing things, and not that's my issue with it. And if you're going to make that argument, if you're going to make that argument, then would you also say that the opposite side is religious sectarianism? There's always been people that disagree about the issue of Israel and Palestine in this country, and why only now are you calling it religious sectarianism? It's just people...
Because I think when you look at the sort of things that are happening on the streets, you're seeing a lot of anti-Semitism. I'm not seeing a lot of Islamophobia coming from the other side, the Israeli side.
Islamophobia increase as well as anti-Semitism. Not to the same degree, but it has happened.
Where is there a voting bloc called, like, for example, the Christian vote?
There are many Christian groups within
called
politics.
the Christian vote, as big as the Muslim vote.
Look, the Muslim vote, the organisation, the Muslim vote...
can you name it? Because I can't name one.
I don't understand what the issue is with a group of Muslims deciding they want to start a political group. There are literally...
So how is that not religious sectarianism? You're tying yourself
there
up
are
in
Christian
knots.
political groups, there are Jewish political groups, there are Muslim political groups.
So
you only call it religious sectarianism when it's a Muslim political group. That is the
I
issue
only
that I
call
have.
it religious sectarianism when we have people on the streets calling for jihad and intifada.
No, but you're
and
just
shouting
conflating
dirty
lots of different
Zionists
things.
at members of
I
Parliament.
discredit your argument, and then you say something else ridiculous.
Well, you didn't.
You're not making
yourself
a coherent
up,
point
as
here.
usual,
You want
Albie.
to talk about the Muslim vote. You want to talk about people talking about jihadis. You want to talk about people who are pro-Gaza. You're trying to make this point about religious sectarianism that I'm just not seeing.
I just think that you had a perfect opportunity to defend multiculturalism there, and you failed.
What's this to do with multiculturalism?
Because
you're like a dog with a bone. You keep bringing it up. People are allowed to be pro-Palestine, and people are allowed to be pro-Israel without people like you saying multiculturalism has failed. I don't say multiculturalism has failed because people are pro-Israel or pro-Gaza or because I disagree with them. You just come up with the same old argument
it's been a massive success story, Albie. Everyone at home will agree with you, no doubt. It's been an overwhelming success story. Suella Braverman is wrong. Suella
Braverman is wrong.
Is right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Couldn't have put it better myself.